December 1944. Snow falls across the Ardennes like shattered glass. Somewhere in that frozen silence inside the turret of a German Panther, a young soldier grips his pen, his fingers stiff from the cold. He's trying to finish a letter home. Then, a thunderclap of engines breaks the calm. Through the periscope, he sees a blur of movement, something fast, too fast to be another tank. In the space of 3 minutes, his world becomes fire and smoke. This is the story of the M18 Hellcat, the fastest tank destroyer ever built, a machine born from desperation, designed to outrun death itself. The problem: Germany's iron monsters. In 1942, the Allied forces faced a terrifying truth. German engineering had produced machines unlike anything seen before. The Tiger and Panther tanks, with armor that could shrug off Allied shells and guns that could pierce anything on the field. They dominated every front they touched. To meet them head-on meant suicide. The U.S. Army needed something different, a weapon that didn't fight like a tank, but hunted like a predator. A weapon that could strike fast, from the shadows, and disappear before the enemy could even return fire. The birth of the Hellcat. The task fell to Buick, a division of General Motors. Their engineers were told, "Forget everything you know about tanks. This new vehicle wouldn't rely on armor or brute strength. It would rely on speed, maneuverability, and precision." Months of experimentation followed. Designers stripped every ounce of unnecessary weight. They built a new chassis from the ground up, powered by a Wright R-975 radial aircraft engine. They gave it a 76mm M1 gun, strong enough to kill a Panther from the side, but light enough to move like lightning. When it was complete, the M18 Hellcat could reach nearly 55 miles per hour, faster than any armored vehicle of the war. The soldiers who first drove it couldn't believe it. They called it a racer with a cannon. Doctrine of the hunter. The Hellcat wasn't meant to lead an assault. It was a tank destroyer, designed to ambush and vanish. Its open-top turret gave crews full visibility and faster reloads, but at a terrible price: no protection from airbursts, snipers, or shrapnel. One lucky shot could turn the crew compartment into an inferno. Yet the men who rode it accepted that risk willingly. They knew speed was survival. U.S. Army doctrine at the time reflected this philosophy. Rather than creating heavily armored tanks, American strategists believed that mobility and communication would win battles. Hellcats were to be used in packs, 3 or 4 working together, striking like wolves, changing position constantly. They were not built to hold ground. They were built to hunt. Field training and tactics. Training for Hellcat crews was brutal. They drilled to fire, move, and reload in seconds. Commanders would yell, "3 minutes," a constant reminder that every encounter with an enemy tank was a race against time. From detection to destruction, they had a window of 3 minutes to kill or die. That mantra followed them from the training fields of Fort Hood to the battlefields of Europe. Their speed allowed tactics unheard of for armored units: rushing down roads between towns, flanking heavier tanks, hitting from multiple angles before fading away. Even their sound was deceptive, a low whine instead of the heavy rumble of traditional tanks. By the time German crews realized where the fire came from, the Hellcats were already gone. The first deployments. By mid-1944, the first M18 arrived in Europe. They saw combat in Italy and France, and soon earned a reputation among infantry units who called them lifesavers. They could cover ground faster than any Sherman, appear on flanks, and take out enemy armor threatening American troops. But the true test was still to come. In the forests of Belgium, the world would soon learn how a few light, fast machines could stop the advance of an army. As December approached, so did one of the largest German offensives of the war, the Battle of the Bulge. And at its heart stood the men of the 705th and 704th Tank Destroyer Battalions, waiting, freezing, and ready. It was the coldest winter Europe had seen in decades. December 16, 1944. Dawn over the Ardennes. The stillness of the forest shattered under the roar of engines and artillery. The German army had launched a surprise counterattack, the last great gamble of the war, known to history as the Battle of the Bulge. American lines were thin. Many believed the war was nearly over, but within hours chaos consumed everything. Columns of Panthers, Tigers, and infantry divisions tore through the snow-covered woods, overwhelming defenses, cutting communication lines, and pushing deep into Allied territory. The 705th takes position at Bastogne, a vital crossroads town in Belgium. The 101st Airborne Division was encircled by German forces. If Bastogne fell, the road to Antwerp would open, and with it, the possibility of splitting the Allied front. To hold the line, the 705th Tank Destroyer Battalion was ordered forward. Among their vehicles were the M18 Hellcats, light, fast, and dangerously under-armored. Their commander, Lieutenant Colonel Clifford Templeton, knew what they were up against. He told his men, "We're not going to fight for armor. We're going to fight for time." First contact. At dawn on December 19th, the 705th's forward platoons reached the outskirts of Bastogne. They dug in at road junctions, set up overlapping fields of fire, and waited. Snow fell thick and heavy, muffling every sound, until the first German column appeared. A Panther tank, followed by a half-track and a Tiger, crept down the narrow forest road. The Hellcat crews held their fire. They knew their 76mm guns could not penetrate a Panther's frontal armor, but the sides and rear, those were vulnerable. As the enemy advanced past the ambush line, Lieutenant Edwin Leiper gave the order. Engines roared to life. The first Hellcat shot forward from behind a tree line, sliding sideways in the snow to expose its gun. "Gunner, up! Target! Panther! Fire!" The shell screamed across the clearing and struck the Panther behind its turret. Flames burst from the engine deck. Before the Tiger's gun could traverse, the Hellcat was already gone, reversing at full speed into the forest. Seconds later, another M18 opened fire from the flank, catching the half-track in its sights. Within minutes, the German column was broken. 3 minutes of chaos, 3 minutes of destruction. The legend of the Hellcat was born. Doctrine in motion. The Americans quickly realized how powerful this new strategy could be. Instead of engaging the enemy head-on, they let the Germans push into kill zones, then hit from the sides and vanished. Hellcats moved in small hunter groups, one baiting fire, the others attacking from hidden angles. Speed was everything. From the moment a German tank spotted them, Hellcat crews had roughly 180 seconds to destroy the target or move before incoming fire reached them. That countdown, 3 minutes to live, became their unspoken mantra. They never stayed in one place long enough for the enemy to adjust. Even their radios were used sparingly, replaced by hand signals and coordination built from endless training. To the Germans, it often seemed like they were surrounded by an entire armored division, when in reality just a handful of Hellcats were at work. The Battle of Bastogne. For nearly a week, the 705th and the airborne troops held the line. German armor attacked again and again, but each time the Hellcats struck first. Their 76mm guns couldn't always destroy the heaviest tanks outright, but they crippled their treads, broke supply lines, and delayed advances. Each minute bought was another moment for the Allies to regroup. When German infantry tried to flank the defenders, the Hellcats shifted position, using their speed to appear where they were least expected. The freezing weather jammed weapons and engines, but the M18's aircraft-derived power plant kept roaring. One crew joked, "She runs like she's got wings." The counterattack. By December 26th, General Patton's Third Army broke through and relieved Bastogne. When his armored columns rolled in, they found the 705th's Hellcats coated in ice, gun barrels blackened from constant firing. They had destroyed over 50 enemy tanks and vehicles during the siege. a staggering number given their light armor. Patton himself would later commend the unit's performance, calling their speed and courage the spirit of American armor. Expanding the legend elsewhere across the Western Front, other Hellcat battalions repeated the pattern. In France, in Luxembourg, in the snow-choked forests of the Ardennes, they learned to use terrain like a weapon, racing through villages, hiding behind hedgerows, firing from unexpected slopes. Enemy reports describe them as phantom tanks. To many German crews, the M18's sudden appearance, fire, and disappearance were so fast it seemed supernatural. But there was nothing mystical about it, only the result of daring, discipline, and an understanding that speed was the deadliest armor of all. Victory and aftermath. By January 1945, the German offensive was broken. The cost had been enormous. Thousands of soldiers lost on both sides. But the tide of war had turned for good. The M18 Hellcat had proven its worth. When the fighting ended, the 705th received a Presidential Unit Citation for its defense of Bastogne. Its crews, men who had faced the best of German armor and survived, became legends of the Tank Destroyer Corps. As winter faded, the Hellcat's engine fell silent, but its roar had already echoed through history. Spring came to Europe in 1945. Snow melted from the fields of Belgium and France, revealing the scars of war. Twisted steel, broken villages, and tracks that led nowhere. Among them sat the M18 Hellcats, silent now, their engines cooled, their crews resting after months of relentless combat. For the men who drove them, the memory of those battles would never fade. They remembered the freezing nights in Bastogne, the thunder of artillery echoing through the trees, and the smell of cordite that clung to everything. They had faced impossible odds, outgunned, out-armored, but never outfought. End of the war. When Germany finally surrendered on May 8, 1945, the Hellcat battalions were among the first to roll across the Rhine. They didn't just mark victory, they symbolized the spirit that had carried the Allies through the darkest months of the war: speed, precision, and courage. The 705th, 704th, and 811th Tank Destroyer Battalions were all credited with dozens of tank kills and hundreds of enemy vehicles destroyed. They had rewritten the rules of armored warfare, proving that agility and strategy could overcome brute strength. The Forgotten Warriors. Yet after the war, the M18's story faded into the background. The world's attention turned to bigger, heavier tanks, like the M26 Pershing and later, the Cold War giants. The Hellcat, once the fastest armored vehicle on the battlefield, became a relic. Many were scrapped, others sold to allied nations, and a few found their way into museums. But to those who served with them, each one was more than a machine. It was a lifeline. It was the difference between being overrun and surviving to fight another day. In interviews years later, veterans spoke of their Hellcats with a quiet pride. One gunner recalled, "Greater than, she wasn't built for armor. She was built for speed. And when you heard that engine behind you, you felt like maybe, just maybe, you could outrun death for another day." Engineering the impossible. The Hellcat's design was revolutionary for its time. Built by the Buick division of General Motors, it used aircraft engineering techniques, aluminum components, a powerful radial engine, and a lightweight hull that sacrificed protection for mobility. It could reach 55 miles per hour, faster than any other tank in World War II. Even decades later, its performance remains unmatched among armored vehicles of its type. During tests, the Hellcat could drive circles around heavier tanks, reposition faster than artillery could track, and deliver accurate fire while on the move, a feat rarely possible then. From battlefield to history. When the guns finally fell silent, many Hellcats were sent home. stored in depots or displayed in parades. Some were shipped to Yugoslavia, Taiwan, and other nations, where they served for decades more. The last operational Hellcats weren't retired until the 1990s, nearly half a century after their birth. Today, restored Hellcats still run in private collections and museums. When their engines start, the deep growl of that Continental radial engine echoes through the air, a sound that once meant hope for the soldiers of Bastogne. The legacy lives on. In military academies, the M18 is still studied as a lesson in asymmetric warfare, how speed and surprise can defeat superior armor. Its tactics influence generations of vehicles, from Cold War reconnaissance tanks to modern light armor. But beyond blueprints and doctrines, the Hellcat's true legacy lies with the men who served her. Ordinary young Americans, mechanics, farmers, students, who learned to fight in a weapon that demanded every ounce of nerve and skill. They didn't fight for glory. They fought to protect one another, to hold a line no one thought could be held, to stop a tide that threatened to drown all of Europe in darkness once more. Final reflection. As years passed, the Hellcat's name grew quieter, overshadowed by newer machines and modern wars. But every December, in veterans' halls and small-town memorials, stories still rise of the fastest tank in World War II, of a machine that could dance through fire and snow, and of the men who made it more than metal. The M18 Hellcat remains a symbol, not just of speed, but of the human will to fight smart, move fast, and never surrender. And when you stand before one today, cold steel under your hand, tracks resting silent, you can almost hear it again. That deep, thunderous growl rising from the past, the heartbeat of a legend, the roar of the Hellcat.